Maybe you've seen one of these thumbnails flying around on the wild, wild web. This is Jimmy Donaldson, also known as MrBeast. Now, MrBeast is all over the headlines, but they're not talking up his latest upload. They're blasting him for a messy lawsuit over burgers.
MrBeast is suing MrBeast Burger for $10 million.
MrBeast is getting sued for $100 million.
But is there a much bigger story here that everyone is missing? What if the significance of these headlines is less about an ambitious YouTuber gone burger mogul and more about how far-reaching the economic power of this new creator class really is? Could the death of Beast Burger actually be about the rise of the content kings? Let's get into it.
I opened up the world's first furry restaurant.
MrBeast is taking his show to the courtroom.
Likely the worst burger the person had ever had.
Look at this sorry, miserable, squashed thing.
I've never ran a restaurant before.
This is a Beast Burger. And if you're a MrBeast fan, you may know that this fella has suddenly become the centerpiece of one of the biggest lawsuits involving a YouTube star in history. If you missed it, MrBeast has recently become the most subscribed individual creator on YouTube. He's got about 250 million subscribers across all of his channels, and he's racking up billions of views, month after month. And if you dig into his videos, it's easy to see why. With over-the-top stunts and enormous cash giveaways, MrBeast has cracked the YouTube code, and in just a few short years, it's propelled him from this to this.
I'm gonna spend the next 50 hours buried alive in this coffin.
We just landed in Antarctica and we're gonna survive the next 50 hours here.
We're going on a $250,000 vacation.
We're curing 1,000 people's blindness.
There's no doubt about it, MrBeast has become a YouTube juggernaut, and his online brand is likely worth billions. Depending on who you ask, MrBeast's net worth is somewhere between that of Robert De Niro and Rihanna. Not bad, considering Jimmy posted his first video just 7 years ago. And in 2020, MrBeast made his first foray into the brick-and-mortar business world with the launch of Beast Burger, a ghost kitchen chain. A ghost kitchen is basically an existing restaurant that agrees to cook up someone else's food on the side and ship it out the back door. The idea was to give participating restaurants, many of them struggling due to the pandemic, a chance to share in Beast Burger's potentially enormous revenues, and share the benefits of Jimmy's exponential fame. Well, despite Beast Burger's seeming success, bringing in over $100 million in revenue in its first year, MrBeast is effectively blowing up his own creation. He is suing the ghost kitchen company that helped him launch and run Beast Burger, and in response, they are countersuing him for $100 million. The stakes are admittedly enormous. But what if all this obsession about the Beast Burger fiasco is actually missing the plot? What if a story that reporters frame as a young kid getting in over his head trying to compete with burger chains is actually much more fundamentally a story about this? Stay with me here. Our last installment, we trace the evolution of technology that has brought Hollywood to its current state of crisis. With the invention of DVDs and the eventual rise of streaming, we've seen the impacts of this major shift in the balance of power, and what has become a broken business model. But just as Netflix disrupted the old TV and film industry by pioneering a new model, their big tech competitors, primarily Alphabet and Meta, are quietly tipping the scales away from Hollywood altogether. These trillion-dollar behemoths are revolutionizing the media business, driving a shift in the landscape of entertainment, news, business, and culture. The age of the Hollywood megastar is fading, and in its wake, an emerging class of content creators are officially winning the war for attention and engagement. Okay, so on this channel, we're a little bit obsessed about the evolution of tech and its subtle and not so subtle impacts on business and culture. It might seem trite and obvious, but it's hard to overstate the smartphone's impact and the many subtle ways it's revolutionizing every facet of media production and consumption. In a 2020 report by the venture capital firm Signal Fire, more than 50 million people around the world consider themselves content creators. a term that encompasses everything from YouTubers to podcasters to writers, artists, and musicians. Anyone who sells or simply shares their wares to followers online. Propelled by the pandemic, content creation is becoming the fastest growing sector of small business. And recent surveys found that more American kids want to be a YouTube star than an astronaut when they grow up. And there are plenty of good reasons for that. The top content creators on YouTube, from Markiplier to Ninja, Jake Paul, Ryan Kaji, they are the new faces of celebrity for Gen Z and even many millennials. The numbers are very telling. Gen Z is 20% of the US population. That's 68 million people. And 38% of Gen Zers spend over 4 hours a day on social media. And on average, 23.6 hours per month on TikTok and 23.2 hours per month on YouTube. It's probably way more than that though. Meaning your average teenager spends dozens of hours per month either viewing or directly interacting with their favorite streamers, content creators. But increasingly, this new media is cutting across generational lines. Joe Rogan, whose celebrity was built primarily offline, has arguably become one of the most successful content creators, translating a long-running, low-budget YouTube podcast into a Spotify deal worth hundreds of millions. Emma Chamberlain, who's only 22 years old, is on Time's 25 most influential people on the internet list, and has built an empire on the back of the humble vlog since 2018, now doing podcasts and long-term deals with luxury brands. The studio behind CoComelon, the animated kids channel, is now the third most subscribed YouTube channel, recently selling its brand to Moonbug Entertainment for $3 billion. These creators are generating wealth for themselves, yes, but it's also creating billions in ad revenue for Alphabet, which just happens to be the fourth most valuable company in the world, now with a market cap of around $1.6 trillion. YouTube, which is the second most used search engine in the world behind Google, is on a trajectory to become Alphabet's second largest source of revenue in the coming year. And last year, it brought in $29 billion in revenue. Okay, so you get it. Young people, old people, we're all addicted to our phones, and most of us are consuming an enormous amount of content. Pretty straightforward. But what does this have to do with Hollywood? Why does this shift in technology threaten to unravel Hollywood as we've known it for so many years? Until relatively recently, the way we've been influenced on what skincare products to buy, what clothes to wear, what brands are in, what liquor to drink, what food trend to follow, that's been fed to us from the stars we see on TV and movies, the music artists on tour and in the tabloids. That's now completely shifted. While Kylie and Kim still make bank and hold huge sway, and while Taylor Swift still commands an army that can change a whole state's economics, that's starting to shift. Now we're saturated in micro-influencers, influencers, and internet stars who are suddenly commanding the lion's share of our screen time. MrBeast is one of the first creators of this era to manifest their fame-powered business model into the real world, beyond just selling some merch. So let's look at some numbers and put things into perspective here. Netflix, the only streaming company to turn a profit in 2022, had almost identical revenue as YouTube last year, which was $31.6 billion. But when you factor in the astronomical costs of content development and production, Netflix eked out a profit of only $4.5 billion. And Alphabet, Meta, and other players in the content space, they took notice. This is almost certainly why, as of last year, the YouTube Originals programming, a play by YouTube to muscle its way into the original content space, has officially shuttered. YouTube spent hundreds of millions partnering with big-name stars like Ellen DeGeneres, Kevin Hart, Demi Lovato, and Katy Perry, and even developed shows like Cobra Kai, which would be sold off to be a big success on another service. The numbers simply didn't make sense. Why build out an original content development team and pay hundreds of millions of dollars to develop shows that don't command anywhere near the viewership or ad revenue as an army of content creators who are making your content for free? These platforms are realizing they don't need to take risks developing expensive content to convert viewers and attract subscribers like streaming networks do. They've realized that consumption habits have changed. Gen Z is the first generation to not list TV and movies as their favorite entertainment option. It's actually ranked 5th for them. For this generation, it's social first and then off platform and legacy media last. The balance of power has shifted. Look, there are currently over 35,000 channels on YouTube with over 1 million subscribers. Collectively, YouTube users view a whopping 1 billion hours of video each day. Each day! And the production costs to YouTube are 0. YouTube is not the only player to do this simple arithmetic. Snapchat shuttered its Originals group last summer, and earlier this year, Meta shut down Facebook Watch Originals. This technological shift is affecting more than Hollywood. Legacy media outlets and TV news are losing out to a growing number of independent news channels, primarily on YouTube, and legacy newspapers are facing fearsome competition from a growing alternative media ecosystem on Substack and Twitter and beyond. Big tech is massively adopting creator monetization, tiered membership models, and community building across all of its varied formats and channels. YouTube is monetizing shorts and building new tools like collab and Q&As. Instagram has just launched broadcast channels for creators to interact directly with followers. X, or Twitter, is now incentivizing content creation, paying royalties, and taking on Substack with premium memberships. If all the user-generated content platforms are building in monetization, paying royalties to creators based on views, and a fair portion of ad revenues, theoretically, where does this leave the streaming companies who have built their platforms doing precisely the opposite? Companies like Netflix that have effectively upended the old carriage TV model that paid advertising and syndication royalties to writers, directors, and actors, which is why these folks are striking, in this new world of streaming, transparency and payment tethered to viewership have almost entirely disappeared. Why would a young creative bother pursuing a career in an industry that doesn't fairly reward success? The writing is on the wall, and it's not a good sign for industries that we know and love. So, we opened this piece with the death of Beast Burger and claimed that it was a sign of something much bigger, an inflection point, a canary in the coal mine. And while it's true that the Beast Burger fiasco could go any number of ways, the most likely outcome will be an expensive lesson for MrBeast. But regardless of that, the lawsuit itself is a sign that shows there's a changing of the guard, and the old kings of fame are slowly but surely losing out to companies like Google and Meta that have figured out how to harness democratized and distributed creativity, and how to properly reward it. Kinda. Now, let's be clear. There will always be a demand for curated, highly produced television and movies. Older generations still love legacy media. There's still an audience to be had on TV, in theaters, thank God. But consumers, especially of the younger generation, are seeking much more, and in some ways much less, than traditional entertainment companies are offering. The entire infrastructure of media consumption has changed. The emerging generation of content consumers wants to connect with individual personalities and join immersive and networked communities. They are also much more adapted to a world of short-form, bite-sized, and viral-worthy content. This trend is really born of habits that have been formed by a generation practically born with an iPhone in their hands. A generation that may be foreign to legacy media and likes the personalized touch, the close access to their favorite creators who operate in a social-first way. And user-generated content platforms that are democratized, open to all, and free to stream are winning this transition. The rise of the content kings is here, and they are an economic force to be reckoned with.